I saw an approximately 100-foot equilateral triangle take off from near the NASA hangar on the base.
A large black triangle materializes or decloaks.
I can't tell you if it's active camouflage. I can't tell you if it appeared around the light, but I can tell you that it was a white light and then it was a triangle. On top of the craft was this gold, lava, plasma, some type of fluid going over and around the craft.
The skin on this thing was like glowing like it was alive. I swear to God.
There were 4 lights in total, 1 light on each corner and a larger light in the center, 2 to 3 times the size of the corner lights. The center light flashes 2 to 3 times.
The evidence of an off-Earth fleet.
A secret space program, though.
The testimony that we heard from Dylan Borland at the recent 2025 UAP hearings was some of the most impactful that we've ever seen go on the congressional record. But I think this tells a story that is far deeper and far more complex than people realize, and this is a classic Polarity hookup. I've gone full Charlie in this one, okay? We've connected dots. I'm pulling on threads that I believe weave together a wild story. And I'm going to take you right back to the start of the investigation. I'm going to take you by the hand, lead you through everything that I've seen, and I'm going to show you why I believe that what Dylan Borland saw is actually part of a secret space program. My name is Josh. Welcome to Polarity. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. We dig into all aspects of the phenomenon, either on a live show or on a video, pretty much every single day. And if you're not new here, welcome back, you little weirdo. Take a seat at the table because dinner is about to be served.
Eventually, people are going to say, what the hell is going on?
No matter how far you go into the dark, when you flip, you go exactly the same place to the light in our galaxy. Everything. Because everything is in balance. Everything is in polarity.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is.
All right, so I guess the best place to start here will be with Dylan Borland's testimony and some of the answers that he gave at the 2025 UAP hearing. What we're going to do is we're going to take it apart piece by piece and take a look at the evidence and corroborating testimony that I think suggests that what he saw was not alien technology, it was ours.
From 2011 to 2013, I was stationed at Langley Air Force Base, Virginia, conducting 24-hour operations via manned and unmanned aerial vehicles for Special Operations Forces in the global war on terror. During the summer of 2012, my team was on standby for weather, and I returned to my barracks on base, and at approximately 0130, I saw an approximately 100-foot equilateral triangle take off from near the NASA hangar on the base. It was between 1 to 2 stories thick, equilateral triangle. I could never see the top of it, and the edges were 90 degrees. There were 4 lights in total, 1 light on each corner, and a larger light in the center, 2 to 3 times the size of the corner lights. I see a white light pop up and stop about 100 feet in the air. I thought it was a weather balloon. I've seen tests from there before, weeknight, normal thing. The light then flies across the base, across the flight line, and as it flies to me, a triangle manifests around the light. I can't tell you if it's active camouflage. I can't tell you if it appeared around the light, but I can tell you that it was a white light and then it was a triangle.
All right, so let's start with this part. This is in 2012 at Langley Air Force Base near a NASA hangar. Now, keep those things in mind because we're going to come to those in a moment. NASA and Langley Air Force Base. But first of all, let's just talk about the triangle. I mean, this shape of aircraft is no stranger to UFO lore, right? In fact, in the 1990s, we have the Belgium UFO wave. This started in the late 80s and went into the early 90s. And there are photos of these triangular craft that were sighted over Belgium. This is one of the biggest UFO flaps in history. And the way that these craft are depicted are exactly how Dylan Borland explained the one that he saw. You've got a light in each corner and a slightly bigger light there in the middle. Now, considering that we're talking about the 1990s, I'm just going to mention that the Lacerta files spoke about this as well. Now, if you don't know what the Lacerta files are, it's basically an interview that allegedly happened between a human and a non-human intelligence. And I've covered this extensively on my channel. I'll leave a link to part 1 below. We read through the whole interview in 2 parts, but in that interview, the person essentially asked, what's going on with UFOs? Are they real? Are they piloted objects? Are they extraterrestrial? Do they belong to your species? And this non-human that identifies as Lacerta gave a pretty detailed answer, but the interesting detail here is this part. We have a small fleet of disc-shaped craft, but such UFOs belong usually to an alien species. Triangular UFOs belong generally to your own military, but they use foreign technology to build them. Now, trust me, I know that a text-only anonymous interview with a non-human intelligence from the 90s is not the most solid piece of evidence that we have, right? But it's interesting because it was done in the 90s, and similar to the 4chan whistleblower, which was a few years ago now, it seems like the more we learn in the UFO non-human intelligence space, a lot of the stuff in that Lesotho interview and in the 4chan whistleblower thread seems to be holding up really well in the modern day. It's kind of creepy. But I did say, let's not forget about Langley Air Force Base. So this article was posted October 15th last year, which is kind of just before the New Jersey drone thing started happening, maybe around the same time. But let's look at what it says. Top security officials in the US remain stumped after an unknown fleet of drones breached restricted military airspace for 17 days last December. So this is December 2023 that this happened. And apparently they're just drones. Now, the reason why I find this interesting is because after the New Jersey drone sightings, the things that were getting called drones were really these balls of light in the sky. Some people have called them plasmoids. Maybe they're plasma, maybe they're not. But they were anomalous lights. They weren't drones like your DJI drone that you go and film things on. They were different. They were anomalous balls of light. And this is where I think it gets really interesting. Take a look at this clip.
In Secret Machines book. That's all I'm going to say.
And this thing is floating in the air.
It'll take a few seconds till they turn on the engine.
That looks pretty badass.
Oh, wait, you can see little lights dancing around on the bottom. But I think this was leaked on purpose because the guy's making it just hard enough to see, moving the camera around in and out of focus.
Yeah, right? Like it's got like, he's barely focusing. Boy, that looks like a drone.
Well,
it looks small too.
It's not. That's pretty big. I would think that one's about 40 feet.
Really?
But look, see the tail fins on the back? That's how you know it's not alien per se. It's built off, I think, technology that came from there. But, you know, they don't need vertical tail stabilizers.
What's that big light?
Okay, this is the engine. They turn it on. So right now they're accessing that energy I told you about. Now, and watch what happens. It's gone. There's a pilot in that.
If that was in a movie, I'd want my money back.
I think Joe owes Tom an apology. That was back in like 2017 that interview happened, and you can see Joe is just not into it. But I think his tune has changed a lot since then. I'd love to see Tom back on the Joe Rogan show today. But here is the video, a little bit bigger and better quality because you can't really see it there. There really isn't much sound to it other than just the background noise, so I think we can turn it down. But the reason why I think this is interesting is because not only do we see here a triangle that has all the characteristics that Dylan Borland spoke about, a bigger light in the middle and lights in each corner as well. However, what I find interesting is that in Dylan Borland's case, he says that he suddenly sees a ball of white light appear and it was moving slowly. And then a triangle materialized around it. Look at what happens in this video. And by the way, this video allegedly is from 1990 or thereabouts, filmed through a night vision lens. So there we go. First of all, we see a triangle on the outside of this white light. This is almost like the reverse of what Dylan Borland explained. He said he saw the white light first and then the triangle materialize around it, almost like it decloaked or decamouflaged or something like that. But Tom DeLonge says this is the engine turning on. This is it kind of getting powered up, prepared to launch or move, right? Let's keep watching. So you've got this triangle materialized around this white light. Now it just turns into a ball of white light, just like what Dylan Borland saw originally. He saw this first and then the triangle. Almost like, we keep watching, we see the big flash and then it's gone.
And then the center light flashes 2 to 3 times, no sound, immediately shoots up to commercial jet level minimum, in my opinion.
It makes me think Dylan Borland saw the other end of what we saw here. For example, we can only assume that in this video, this craft has gone somewhere. Does it arrive in the same state that it left in? i.e. it arrived as a ball of white light, just like the ball of white light appeared to Dylan. And then slowly it went back to a triangle around the ball of white light, just like we saw before it took off. What I'm kind of getting at here is it feels like this footage could be what happened before Dylan saw his sighting, i.e. this thing powered up. It arrived in this location near the NASA hangar at Langley Air Force Base, which was covered in anomalous lights, and apparently it wasn't a big deal. It powers up, it goes to the ball of white light again, and then it just flashes and disappears. Now, before we move on to the next part where we hear from Dylan again, I just want to show you an interesting comparison that I noticed to how that flash looks to something else that I'm sure we're all pretty familiar with. So this is the infamous MH370 satellite footage. Now, you guys know I've spoken about this a fair bit on my channel. I've spoken to Ashton Forbes, who's done a lot of research into these videos and the potential technology surrounding it. There is so much in this video to me that is compelling that this is real footage. And I've gone into that in other videos. We don't need to go into it again. I'm far more high conviction of this footage rather than the thermal one. I still think the thermal one has a lot of reasons that it could be real. But this one to me is extremely compelling for a multitude of reasons from a visual effects perspective. However, when we see this thing essentially blink out of existence, the flash that we see right there looks exactly like what we saw on the TR3B video. I made a little comparison here. Let's take a look at this. Look at the way that they blink. Now, obviously, these are taken on different cameras, these potentially different imaging systems. I think it's crazy how similar these things look. Now, again, this isn't concrete evidence, but it's an interesting data point, I think, because what we're seeing happen with the TR3B, it's essentially like going through a wormhole. It's warp speed. It's a warp drive. It's there and then it's gone. Just like what we see in the satellite video, and the effect that it has visually kind of looks the same as well. So it makes me wonder, like, is the technology that we're seeing here the same or similar, just being applied in a different way? For example, with the TR3B footage, is whatever is creating this energy for the craft to kind of wink out of existence, it's probably in a more controlled, contained environment, likely within the craft itself, or whatever is creating it is contained to within the craft. Are we seeing a similar kind of technology here in the MH370 videos, but it's being applied in a far more aggressive, less controlled way? And that's why we're seeing these three orbs spinning around the craft, potentially creating some kind of like energy field around it, still doing the same thing, but again, in a more sort of volatile, aggressive manner. I don't necessarily think this is one of the strongest data points in the video, but I do think it's compelling enough to include in the case. But let's keep listening to Dylan Borland.
It stopped about 100 feet in front of me and approximately 100 feet above me. My telephone got extremely hot, completely froze, dead. But what was really odd was the outside. The best way to describe it is like looking at a James Webb telescope picture where you have the colors and then the black background. So the craft itself was this black metallic flake paint, but on top of the craft was this gold, lava, plasma, some type of fluid going over and around the craft.
Now, this is where I think it gets really interesting. Dylan talks about seeing a gold plasma that's like a fluid that's coating the craft. In the video we just looked at with MH370, Ashton Forbes tends to believe that Lockheed Martin is responsible for whatever we saw happen in that video, and he might be right. What is interesting is there is a video of Lockheed Martin from 11 years ago basically describing this technology.
Where do we go next? You know, that's always the fun question.
You know, right now our airplane designs are very reductionist. We have fuel over here. We have the cockpit. We have the engine. They're all separate parts. What if we could integrate those parts together in a holistic manner?
Can we do things like embed the carbon nanotubes to make conductive structure so that information doesn't flow through a wire next to a structure, but literally flows through the structure.
We'll be able to grow or make a structure that, say, is the skin of an aircraft, that inside of that is also contained the sensors or the energy storage or many different multiple functions.
We're literally hearing from Charles Chase there say 11 years ago, by the way, what if we can integrate the skin of the craft to be able to transmit the energy source, the fuel, information? This is literally what we seem to be hearing in these testimony, that the skin of the craft seems alive. And this isn't just exclusive to an 11-year-old Lockheed Martin video or even Dylan Borland's testimony either. And this is why I think this stuff is just crazy. At the last UAP hearing, we heard about the Immaculate Constellation document that got entered into the congressional record by Michael Schellenberger. And we now know that that Immaculate Constellation document was written by Matthew Brown. And we're going to come back to Matthew Brown soon in a moment as well. But in this document, one of the many UAP sightings in it that it details, it specifically speaks about a UAP that appeared over a nuclear aircraft carrier where the skin of the craft appeared to be roiling like the surface of the sun. The sun is literally a giant ball of plasma, just like Dylan Borland described in his testimony.
On top of the craft was this gold, lava, plasma, some type of fluid going over and around the craft.
And we've seen footage of this. We've seen footage of UFOs that appear to literally be roiling like the surface of the sun. This is one that I've shown a few times on the channel, but I just think it's one of the most incredible videos that we've seen because you can literally see this roiling right here. You can see it. It looks like a little sun in the sky. You can see it's fluid, it's dynamic. It is honestly one of the most compelling videos, I believe, that we've got. And it's far more impressive than any UAP video that's ever come out of the government, the military, or Congress. I mean, it's in color, first of all. That's a bonus. Literally just being a color video, it's automatically better than anything we've seen come out of Congress. But not only this video, though, we've heard from James Fox. He has said himself that the most compelling footage that he has ever seen of a UFO looked just like this.
The guy gets out of the car, takes the camera, and he pans it up, and right about the height of a telephone pole, you could hit it with a rock easily, was this perfect disc. And I'd interviewed a lot of people that have just tried to describe what the disc looked like and had the flight characteristics and how it floats. But I'd obviously never seen it, so I could only imagine. I've only had words. And I could see why they've had so much difficulty describing what it looked like, because the skin on this thing was like glowing like it was alive. I swear to God.
The skin of the craft was alive. This was a video that was shown to him by a man named Chuck Clark, and he told the story that we just saw there on Logan Paul's podcast. And Logan Paul, being Logan Paul, took $100,000 in cash to Chuck Clark to buy the video off him. And Chuck Clark refused to sell it. Little did he know, Logan Paul was wearing a button camera and recorded the TV screen that it was shown to him on. And Logan Paul still has this footage, and he's spoken about it publicly, and for some reason he just won't release it. I don't know why that would be. You'd have to ask him. But if we're discussing UFOs that are glowing with an orange-like plasma that makes the craft look like it's alive, it would be absolutely remiss of me if I did not mention these famous shots taken by a Mexican photographer named Carlos Diaz in 1992. These images were shot on film. They all depict a saucer-like shaped object with the exterior glowing a deep orange, almost like its outer layer is active, almost like the outer layer is perhaps passing information through the skin of the craft, as suggested by Lockheed Martin. This is something that we've heard from many people, that these crafts themselves are sentient, that they are living biology. Most famously, we heard this from the son of Colonel Philip Corso, who wrote the book The Day After Roswell.
Did your dad believe that the craft, and this is a replica of what the craft looked like?
Which my dad worked with a fellow named McDonald, a young man, and they drew it out and engineered it forward with two other guys. This is living biology. And what you're seeing is the aura around it, the aura around it, living biology. It died after it crashed.
The idea of these UAPs being sentient living biology themselves isn't necessarily new. And when we talk specifically about plasma, this paper, which came out in October 2024, is speaking about exactly that. that these anomalous objects in the sky that are often called plasmoids may actually be sentient, as they often detail maneuvers and behavior that indicates that they are intelligently controlled. These orbs, spheres, these plasmoid objects, they may literally be sentient and intelligent forms of life. By now, you're probably wondering, okay, but what does this have to do with the secret space program? Well, let's not forget, this UFO sighting that was highlighted recently by Moneypenny, and I did a video on this and covered it pretty extensively. She brought a really interesting UFO case to our attention here. So you can look this one up. It's on the New Fork website. You put in this sighting number and you'll be able to take a look at it yourself. This was documented in 2015. So this is a couple of years after Dylan Borland's sighting at Langley Air Force Base and only a year after MH370. Just throwing it out there. The reason why this is interesting is because, first of all, it was a triangular shaped object, a large one. This person estimates it to be 500 to 750 feet across. Now, this could be just a much bigger version of what Dylan saw, or perhaps this person's estimates are off. Either way, it was gold colored, it was moving slowly with no sound. Literally all of these details line up exactly, other than the fact that it's a slightly different size. This is why I think this is really interesting. This gold-colored giant triangle was first sighted on Offutt Air Force Base at an altitude of 2,000 feet, approximately 2 miles from the base. So just like in Dylan Borland's testimony, he was on Langley Air Force Base, and he saw this thing just across near a NASA hangar just off the base. Langley Air Force Base and Offutt Air Force Base are both highly sensitive military bases. In fact, Offutt Air Force Base is home of the Strategic Command, which, you know, this is obviously all military bases are sensitive, but some are more sensitive than others. And I think this one specifically is right up there with sensitive airspace. The person continues on describing how this thing was just moving slowly, still maintaining its mid-level brightness of a gold color. It hovered there for approximately 1 minute until it suddenly just winked out. The object never appeared to make any sound. This is almost verbatim Dylan Borland's testimony.
And then the center light flashes 2 to 3 times, no sound, immediately shoots up to commercial jet level minimum. I didn't actually see it take off. I would have thought it was a star.
So when we look at that New Fork sighting, we listen to Dylan Borland's testimony. We have 2 big gold plasma-like triangles hovering silently over extremely sensitive American military bases that just all of a sudden wink out of existence. This is what the New Fork sighting that we just looked at says. This is what Dylan Borland said. And it's exactly what happened in the MH370 satellite video as well. Now, look, I don't want to push the MH370 thing too far. The last thing I need is the CIA bot brigade from X to show up in my feed again. I'm just an innocent man with opinions. Please, I surrender. But what we have here is 2 witness testimonies of large, triangular, gold-colored spacecraft hovering over extremely sensitive American military bases, which apparently did not evoke any type of defensive response from the military, despite the fact that the entire argument for secrecy on this topic is national security. Apparently, they can't talk about it, and whistleblowers get threatened because it's a threat to national security. But a giant triangular spacecraft using unknown propulsion systems hovering over your sensitive military bases is not a threat to national security? Because no one seems to care. There was no reaction. There was no defensive response. There was no announcement. There was no warning. Like, think about that. People are being threatened with prison time and even their life for speaking about these things. But when these events are occurring over US military bases, there are no jets being scrambled. There's no national warning or announcement. It happened for 17 days straight at Langley, and apparently it's just nothing to worry about. But don't you dare talk about it.
I should actually back up and say the image itself was unique. This isn't by a plane or a satellite. It looks to be a image pretty close to the waterline. So something that to me read is we have a clandestine submersible asset close by this fleet, and it's taking pictures, trying to stay unnoticed. And so, yes, in the description, it basically lays out what occurred that night. Which was that our collection assets were there in area monitoring Russian naval vessels. Not sure what they're doing there. but they've been hanging out in the middle of the ocean in this place apparently for a few days. Keep an eye on him. And this night, while they are observing the Russian vessels, a large black triangle materializes or decloaks or something. The point is it did not move. It appeared directly above these ships, probably no more than 200 meters, pretty close. And interestingly, as noted in the report itself, there was no visible reaction from these vessels from what would almost certainly be considered a hostile approach.
What do you take away from that? They didn't notice it, or they're not upset about it, or they don't know what to do with it, or what?
So the implication also in the text describing it was, the analysis in the text was that the Russian Navy had foreknowledge that this vehicle would appear in that area of the ocean, and they were there specifically to either collect on it themselves or to interact with it in some way.
Any indication that it might be theirs, that they knew it's going to be there because they control it?
Not in that document, and I haven't seen anything to make me think that they controlled that particular craft, but didn't see anything to the contrary either.
I guess it could be that they've seen it before, that there's nothing they can do about it, so don't get excited about it.
Might be, although it is interesting, if it's something that's part of their environment, as it were, why are they making an effort to be in this space at this time to collect on something they already know about?
Is it like in the middle of nowhere?
Yeah, it's off the coast of Kamchatka.
I said we would come back to Matthew Brown, and there's a lot to unpack in that clip there. But first of all, off the coast of Kamchatka, the Russians were gathered at sea, where a giant triangular craft just materialized in front of them, like they were expecting it. And by the way, those recent earthquakes that happened like a month ago, some of the most powerful earthquakes ever recorded, just so happened to directly hit Kamchatka, right where the Russians have a nuclear submarine base. What a coincidence. I mean, that's crazy bad luck. I mean, there's definitely no way that like a direct energy weapon potentially located at the South Pole could have done that, right? Like, ones that can trigger earthquakes and start fires simultaneously in different places all at once. It's definitely far more likely that out of anywhere in the entire world, it just happened to hit an adversary of the West's nuclear submarine base. Coincidence number 10,364. Anyway, the point is, the Russians were well aware of and potentially working with these triangular spacecraft that are operating on propulsion systems that we just don't know about. And there was that specific detail in there too, that it materialized. Just like Dylan Borland saw the triangle materialize.
And as it flies to me, a triangle manifests around the light.
From the way Matthew Brown describes this encounter, it is as if the Russians were well aware and prepared for what was about to happen. And based on what we've looked at so far, it seems like the Americans are aware of it too. I mean, either that or they just literally don't care that giant triangles are loitering over their most sensitive military bases. But that wouldn't make sense, right? Because the UAP issue is a national security issue, right? But when you try to report that our national security might be under threat because there's giant triangles hovering over our bases, you get threatened with your life. I mean, you don't need to be Werner von Braun to work out what might be going on here. Either both countries have developed exotic technology at a similar rate and coincidentally have designed their new spacecraft in a very identical manner, or, and this is what I believe, there is some kind of global organization that does not have allegiance to any particular country, that operates beyond the oversight or law of any country, of any military, of any intelligence agency. However, I do believe some of these intelligence agencies or factions of them are almost like a regional manager that report to the boss. I've always found the quotes from Stephen Greer really interesting. When he speaks about his whistleblowers and the connections and the people that he talks to that are stuck in these programs, he says that these people feel stuck on the other side. And these guys that are in these programs, these are like tier 1 operators we're talking about, like super high level military special ops guys. And these people would have spent decades around violence, guns, war, and are probably some of the most capable men on the planet when it comes to defending themselves. Yet we hear these stories that these men are literally trembling with fear when they share their testimony privately to members of the government. It sounds insane, but when you start to consider all of this, it actually does start to make a little bit of sense. I mean, how do you whistleblow against someone who has the ability to just wormhole you into another dimension? Is this why Tim Taylor specifically placed certain factions of the intelligence agencies below off-planet beings and above humans on his hierarchy of beings?
Yes, that these were beings that were higher on the kind of like this hierarchy of beings. His taxonomy is that there's a God, right? And then there are these angels, and then there are off-planet intelligences, ETs, right? And then below that, there are what he calls certain factions, not all, certain factions within the intelligence community, and then humans.
I've said on this channel many times before that my own personal belief is that each country at its own highest level is akin to a regional manager reporting to a much higher force that none of us will ever know or see. And I personally think that that force is non-human. And I know that sounds crazy, but I think President Reagan did too.
I couldn't help at one point in my discussions privately with General Secretary Gorbachev, when you stop to think that we're all God's children wherever we may live in the world, I couldn't help but say to him, just think how easy his task and mine might be in these meetings that we held if suddenly there was a threat to this world from some other species, from another planet, outside in the universe. We'd forget all the little local differences that we have between our countries, and we would find out once and for all that we really are all human beings here on this earth together. Well, I don't suppose we can wait for some alien race to come down and threaten us, but I think that between us we can bring about that realization. In our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our peoples than war and the threat of war? I think maybe I'd answer it this way. I keep, in my frustration sometimes, you know, actually, if you count some of the things going on in smaller countries and all, there have been about 114 wars since World War II. But I've often wondered, what if all of us in the world discovered that we were threatened by a power from outer space, from another planet? Wouldn't we all of a sudden find that we didn't have any differences between us at all? We were all human beings, citizens of the world, and wouldn't we come together to fight that particular threat?
Is that threat that President Reagan is speaking about already here? Has it been here for a long time? What could be more inhumane than humans all constantly attacking each other and being at war with each other? Tom DeLonge has even suggested that each country is being manipulated by a higher force, keeping us in a state of war because somehow they feed on our negative energy. They feed on our chaos and conflict. Or maybe, as the Freemason logo suggests, they find order out of chaos. And what if disclosing this truth to the public is so difficult because this species that is manipulating us looks just like us?
And at that time, I was given a cosmic top secret clearance, which was and still is the highest level of security access that NATO has. When the study was concluded in '64, they concluded that there were 4 different groups apparently coming and visiting us. Out of those 4 different groups, one group looked exactly like we do, so much so that they could sit beside you in a restaurant or in an airplane or in a theater, and you'd never know. One day at lunch, a lieutenant colonel made the remark, he says, Jesus, do you realize they could even be in the White House?
We know that in the 30s and 40s, the Germans were fascinated with these blonde-haired, blue-eyed, tall beings. We often hear about the Nordics. And according to Representative Eric Burleson, who is working alongside David Grush, these Nordic beings with blonde hair and blue eyes walk among us.
The Nordic people or the Nordic aliens are like a few hundred years more advanced than we are, but they're not super advanced. They're not like he said the Greys, whatever is sending the Greys, is extremely advanced, like thousands and thousands of years more advanced than us, because it's doing all the anti-gravity stuff, all the crazy, all this crazy stuff that's very highly advanced. And a lot of it is what he says with the Greys is psionic. So they basically don't have physical interfaces. They're using their mind, and that there's an interface that picks up thought, and then that and that's how they operate these vehicles, is out of psionic. But the Nordic people somewhat resemble humans, and they have been experimenting with crossbreeding with humans. And he says some of them, that there are aliens that are crossbreeds living in the world.
Is that who was seen visiting the Russians in Matthew Brown's Immaculate Constellation testimony? Is that who was seen over Offutt Air Force Base, over Langley Air Force Base? Is that who's responsible for manipulating humanity into a constant state of war and chaos?
Some of the testimony that's come to me over the last year in particular has been nothing short of startling in terms of the degree to which the space program, the secret space program, has expanded. I've talked to people who have said that there is and has been an ongoing extrasolar planetary colonization program that's been going on for decades and decades. I mean, to the point where one of the people who had actually gone, and this was the claim that he made, that he was on a warp-capable spacecraft that went from here to the edge of the Andromeda Galaxy in 20 minutes. And that when they got there, they located at least 8 Earth-like planets in some of the star systems along the edge of the galaxy. And 8 of those planets had human life on them. They were Earth-sized planets with sun-like stars similar to our sun, at approximately the same distances. They wound up using some kind of radio telemetry sensors to determine which ones were broadcasting in conventional radio and television signals. They found 2 planets like that, 2 of which were speaking English. And the minute I heard this, I thought, well, this is complete baloney, or this system, this whole program has been going on for a lot longer than anybody would dream. But he described seeing cities and roads and cars and people and conventional clothing speaking English. And there's only one way that that's possible, I mean, other than, parallel universe type of a scenario. And that is that the program's been going on for much, much longer.
If you've been watching this channel for a little while, you might recognize Mark McCandlish there from the 2001 press conference where he testified with drawings of US reverse-engineered UFOs, which he termed ARVs, Alien Reproduction Vehicles. Now, the interview you just watched there was taken nearly 15 years later after that original testimony. And like most people who speak the truth on this topic, it was only a few years later after that interview that he mysteriously ended his own life. Now, I understand the secret space program stuff really begins to push the edge of what people in the UFO space are prepared to believe. Even when the head of Israel's space program for 30 years and Brigadier General in their defense force came out literally saying America has bases on Mars. This was in 2020, and we never heard a word from him since. But even still, people find this idea just too far-fetched. But let's not forget that NASA was founded and established with hundreds of Nazi scientists and engineers from the very beginning due to Operation Paperclip. Most notably, Werner von Braun, but there were many, many others as well. And there are many theories that the Nazis were already working on prototypes of flying discs and exotic propulsion before World War II even began. So when you consider the fact that these same people who were an integral part of NASA, it becomes hard to imagine that they would rally the entire nation to put man on the moon and then essentially do nothing of significance as an organization ever again. All of that money, time, energy, and focus to put man on the moon, all just to stick a flag in it and never go back. People often cite the fact that the nation's interests began to change. It was no longer a financial priority with the Cold War. But it was only around a decade after the Apollo program in 1981, coincidentally, under President Reagan, who we just heard from, that the military rolled out the Strategic Defense Initiative, also known as the Star Wars program. And this program was the catalyst for the military rolling out laser and particle beam technology, and that's literally the mainstream narrative. That's not just me being a conspiracy theorist, that's what's on Wikipedia. But this is what former United States Air Force Colonel Wendell Stevens has to say about what the Star Wars program was really about.
The discs are not built by one company. The modules are built by different companies, so no one company has the whole vehicle.
And then assembled
by the government out at Lancaster, and then flown to their
Lancaster, where?
Lancaster, California.
Or what base is that associated with? Edwards.
And then they're flown to their operating facility. I understand there's one out in California near Point Mugu and one under Beale Air Force Base. But the operational discs were built. The ones that are on patrol were built over 10 years ago. And they evolved from the gravity control technology that was developed at Alice Springs out in Australia. And from that, we designed operational discs to go on patrol. This was the original Star Wars project that was envisioned by President Reagan. Yeah, the money was put up for Star Wars was really put up to finish the development of the operational discs, but we let the public think we're spending it on telescopes and other research materials. They're probably doing that too, but the impetus for the Star Wars program was to get patrols in space.
This program was really about covertly injecting these exotic technologies and propulsion systems to be used by the military. But it has to be done in secret. You don't want the enemy knowing how good your best weapons are. But even after hearing from whistleblowers and journalists going under oath, witness testimony, video footage, film photographs, former aerospace, intelligence, and military employees, and even defense contractors, all detailing this exact technology, I'm sure there will still be skeptics out there that will argue that all of these people are all Americans. This could all just be a giant Psy-Op. Why is it always America? They could all just be spinning a certain narrative that is within America's best interest. Well, this next person is not American at all. In fact, he's a wanted man in America because he uncovered everything that we have just spoken about for himself from his own home in England.
Experience of waiting all that time from when he was arrested back in 2002 for hacking into US military computers. All that time, the US has wanted him to go on trial there where he could face a potentially 60-year sentence.
In the year 2000, Gary McKinnon gained access to a large network of computers on a military base in America, and he was on a mission specifically to find evidence of UFOs and free energy technology because he believed it was being suppressed.
You hacked into the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Department of Defense, and NASA, amongst other things. Why?
I was in search of suppressed technology, laughingly referred to as UFO technology. I think it's the biggest kept secret in the world because of its comic value. But it's a very important thing. We've got old age pensioners can't pay their fuel bills. We've got countries being invaded to award oil contracts to the West. And meanwhile, secretive parts of the secret government are sitting on suppressed technology for free energy.
Not only did Gary find what he was looking for, but so much more. Something that at the time was hard for even him to believe and comprehend, and something that led to most people just writing him off as a liar because it just sounded way too far-fetched.
What did you find? And then how did Solar Warden get attached to you?
It was an Excel spreadsheet. And there was a non-terrestrial officers list, and I can't remember the file name of the spreadsheet, but the heading on the column was non-terrestrial officers. And I looked it up at the time, and it was nowhere, absolutely nowhere, in that exact phrase, the quotation marks in a Google search.
Indeed.
If you search for it now, all you find is references to me finding it. But obviously, it wasn't aliens. It wasn't, little green men. I took it to just mean there must be evidence of an off-Earth fleet. If you have non-terrestrial officers, you must have spaceships that are based in maybe in geostationary orbits. Who knows?
Right, exactly. And indeed, isn't this? What do you think today about that phrase? Do you think that still can refer to off-planet officers, or do you have a different opinion about that?
I think because I found it on, if I remember rightly, what was a Navy machine, that it probably pertains to human soldiers or human personnel.
Right, non-terrestrial, but off planet or on?
Yeah, but off planet. I mean, that's all that means, isn't it? Is they're not
exactly
in the locale of the Earth. So they could be orbiting, there could be Mars, there could be the Moon. Who knows? But,
yeah, a secret space program, though. Like you still believe, I think, as I do, frankly, that non-terrestrial officers would refer to human beings, officers who are off-world in some capacity.
Yeah,
and in a classified way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you found that, was that in the U.S. Space Command website, or was that in some other, or not website, excuse me, was it in U.S. Space Command, or was it in some other department of the military or the Navy?
I'm not sure. I think it's the Navy.
Even the great Richard Dolan, who we love on this channel, as wild as it sounds, agrees that what Gary McKinnon uncovered can only be explained as evidence of a secret space program. And I'll leave a link to the full interview with Gary and Richard Dolan below as well. But he didn't stop there. He chased up the lead from a former NASA contractor named Donna Hare, who testified at the exact same press conference that we just saw from Mark McCandlish as well. And when he followed the details that she gave, he found exactly what he was looking for.
You saw something as well on your screen, but you didn't have the ability to take a screenshot, I think it was.
Yeah, that was NASA Johnson Space Center. Mm-hmm. And that was due to the testimony of Donna Hare.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Donna Hare, and I worked at Philco Ford Aerospace from 1967 to 1981. I did the launch slides and landing slides, and also projection plotting boards, lunar maps for NASA. We were a contractor, but most of the time I worked on site, in Building 8.
In the retelling of the story, she mentioned which space center it was at, which was Johnson, and which building it was in, which was Building 8.
Oh.
And, yeah, I was already on Johnson with the blank password scanning method.
Yes.
I thought, crikey, Building 8, I've got to get onto this. And you can run a command in a Windows box that shows you a list of all the machines on the network, plus their comment fields. And system administrators, network administrators use these comment fields for serial numbers, for auditing, all sorts of handy information. And luckily, the NASA administrators were really on their job and knew which building each machine was in, the serial number, etc. So I stripped out all the Building 8 machines and then did a blank password scan on those. And I think only 10 or so had blank passwords. You run your scan, they come back, you log on to each one. You look individually. These machines had nothing on it but a couple of folders and a couple of shortcuts. And but these files were massive. They had folders called either sort of raw and filtered, or processed and unprocessed. And that was my first sign. What Donna said is absolutely true. This is almost exactly how she described it. And then I got in there. They're in a NASA proprietary format. They were typically like 200 megabytes more, upward in size. And once you make your link through your command console, then I ran a remote control desktop thing called Remotely Anywhere. It's a bit like using PC Anywhere, or a lot of people use them these days. I don't know if I'm logging into the office remotely
okay.
your desktop. So yeah, it was a bit like that. And I couldn't download them, so I just double clicked on one, just to see it there and then on the desktop. So I had to know instantly what was there. Could I confirm right there and then what Donna Hare was saying? And I did, and then it started to come on the screen, and it was very slow, sort of shuttering down line by line. I thought, crikey, I can't bloody wait for this. I turned the screen down, and it's still quite slow. I thought it was a bit faster.
Maddening.
And I ended up at, I think, 640 by 480 resolution.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then it was coming down. Okay, I was seeing it. And there was what looked like fuzzy sort of grey at first. And then there was this lightning haze. And then there was the hemisphere of the planet. And then I'm like, this is it. Found it. It's the Holy Grail. Exactly what I was looking for. All confirmed with one story. Because that's what I wanted. I didn't want to read about it or watch videos of lights in the sky. I wanted, from the horse's mouth, so to speak, proof that A, they were real, and B, that NASA or the government knew about them. So here it was. And it got about 2/3 of the way down. And there was, I assume it was the Earth. I can't believe if it was a colour or monochrome. but clouds, and then this perfectly smooth shell of a craft that got to just underneath its body, and there were no rivets, no seams. There was no sign of sort of working on this thing. It was weirdly smooth, but it did have these, like the golf ball domes, the geodesic domes for communications, like radar installations, which is kind of human, above and below. And
so these were on the craft, these domes type structures?
Yeah.
In 2002, after Gary was caught, it was far easier to write this man off as a kook, right? And I'm sure many people did. I'm sure some people still do today. But as time goes on, when we look through the history and the things that we have learnt since 2002, there is a clear pattern here. Are random people all around the world spontaneously popping up with almost identical wild theories about triangular UFOs and suppressed technology, all so they can be laughed at, ridiculed, threatened with 60 years in prison? Or is there constantly smoke everywhere because there is a fire? A really big fire that I don't think can be ignored anymore. And let's not forget, this patent for a triangular spacecraft was filed in 2004. It matches the description given by Dylan Borland almost exactly. A light in each corner, a bigger light in the middle, sharp angles on the edges. This is a real patent. All you need to do is Google triangular spacecraft patent and it will be the first result. It also looks extremely similar to the photos from the Belgian UFO wave and the video shown by Tom DeLonge of the TR3B on Joe Rogan. And I'm sure that after all of this, there will still be people who argue that there is no proof of it though. And while I can't sit here and kick the tires and slap the roof of a TR3B, I would argue back and say, I just gave you the proof in this video. Proof that at the very least, something major is going on in this world that we are not being told about. In fact, I honestly believe that if you've watched the video up until this point and you still think that this is all just bullshit and that all of these people are just independently telling similar lies just to play a trick on you, I would argue that you have actually become the modern conspiracy theorist. To gaslight yourself into believing that all of these independent testimonies are liars or just crazy people feels like far more of a stretch than there actually might be something to it. And I haven't even mentioned the countless cases of people independently speaking out about having their memories tampered with after being part of a secret space program. And at the end of the day, it only takes one of these cases to be true for it to be real. And then the door is swung wide open to an entire side of reality that you have never been told about. Guys, thank you so much for watching the video today. I'm really looking forward to see what you guys have to say and what your thoughts are in the comments below. If you made it this far and you enjoyed it, I have two things to ask of you. First of all, chuck a like on the video. It's quick, easy, and free, and it really does help. If you thought there was some thought-provoking questions and ideas here, please consider sharing it around as well. Secondly, YouTube now has a new feature called Hype. You can now hype a video, which puts hype points on the video and ranks it against other videos in a similar category. Basically, this is like a direct push into the algorithm. If you get lots of hype points, it means people really like your video and YouTube is going to send it out through the algorithm. This is currently only available on mobile though, so you'll have to get this video up on your phone and that's where you can hype it up. I think this feature could be huge for helping Polarity grow. And if you'd like to support me further, you can become a channel member below. It's $5 a month and you get access to extra members only content as well. Or you can support me directly by going to the Buy Me a Coffee link below. I'm usually live at 9 PM Australian time every day. But if you can't make that, go to the live tab on my channel and you can watch the replays back and there is a whole other wealth of content there for you to get into. So guys, thank you once again. If you made it this far, hit me with a yes, chef in the comments. Let me know that you enjoyed the meal. Keep being good to each other, guys. Be kind. Get outside every day. Touch some grass and I will see you in the next one.
Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on?
No matter how far you go into the dark, when you flip, you go exactly the same place to the light in our galaxy. Everything. Because everything is in balance. Everything is a polarity.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is.